Over the past few years, many office workers have grown accustomed to the flexibility and comfort of working from home. Transitioning back to the office involves reopening doors and creating environments that allow us to work in new ways. In fact, some say that we are now entering a new era of work. It's not just about where we work, at home or the office, but also about how the work environment supports our overall well-being and enables us to thrive. And it is here that the modern office building has much more to offer than many have yet realized. In this episode, we discover the most important factors in creating a workplace that is good for you. The WELL Building Standard plays a crucial and increasingly significant role in the building industry. So today I welcome Dr. Whitney Austin-Gray, Senior Vice President at the International WELL Building Institute, back for a second time to this podcast. So welcome, Dr. Gray.
Honored to be here.
So let's jump in with describing what the WELL Institute does. I know that you work to raise awareness among building owners, developers, employers, occupants about the impact of the built environment. Tell us a little more about what you do there.
So the International WELL Building Institute leads the WELL Building Standard. So that is the first, most comprehensive building certification and now workplace certification in the world on human health. To put it more simply, humans spend 90% of their time indoors. So for my math experts out there, if you're 50, that's 45 years of your life. And the professionals that design, build, operate, maintain those buildings have never been required to have any training in health. The WELL Building Standard provides you a pathway to create environments that enable people to thrive. So we have 10 concepts: air, water, light. We're going to look at nourishment, movement, community concepts. We'll even look at thermal, materials issues, and water. And all of these things are what create environments that enable or disable people to be at their best or, frankly, their worst. Some estimates look at the levels of sick buildings in the world to be 1 out of 3. Even more if you look at current recommendations for air quality in buildings.
Sick buildings. I guess that is the opposite of healthy buildings. What would a sick building look like?
So a sick building is determined to be one in which the occupants report symptoms from a list of about 10 different ones, including wheezing, coughing, congestion, and those symptoms dissipate when you leave the building. So if you have a sick building, it's determined by its sick people. That also has physical consequences and does not enable us to live long life. So one of the things I've been asking myself a lot lately is, what would I pay for an extra 10 years of life? And if you're thinking to yourself, I'll just do that later, that's the wrong answer. So if you're in a sick building today, that means that you're not invested in your health for the future.
So much there to talk about. If we focus in on some of the latest trends that actually can impact some of these areas that you talked about when it comes to indoor climate, you have spoken of the new era of work. Can you explain a bit about the concept, what it means for us?
So we are living in what I would reference as the new era of work. So when we look over history and time, there's these different eras in about 20-year increments. There were different people, there was different generations, there was different types of buildings. And we've all now entered in 2024 post-pandemic. That was your first year post-pandemic officially. We're asking ourselves, how do people want to work? Many people didn't realize in 2019, the stats were saying from the World Health Organization that work was killing us. Burnout was over $3 billion, the price tag. And although we cured environments from many of the physical, biological, and chemical hazards, we hadn't dealt with the psychosocial hazards. And so people were spending a lot of time inside. And the work-life balance, for anyone out there, I'm just going to say that term is not real. There's never really a balance there. But this idea that we want something different from our work, that we've realized what it's like to not be with our colleagues in person. We realize what isolation and quarantine is, and we want more. We want fresh air. We want to be able to step outside. We want to have good food, and we want to work hours that enable our brain to be at its best. We want to show up for our family and our friends, and we don't want to be exhausted with long commutes where we just feel like we don't have the energy to do what we want by the end of the day. So with all of that being said, the worker in this new era of work is demanding that environments be better.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt you there for a second because I'm just wondering if you mentioned that people are demanding this. Would you say the average worker really knows that they want to have good air quality? Is that something that we need to sell in as a workplace to really show, promote, as you say, be able to demonstrate this?
So, yes. You don't want to wait to go to the doctor to be diagnosed with a problem. And for all my leaders, building leaders listening today, you do make the invisible visible. So it's your job to take what we do with improved air quality and well buildings and tell people you're returning to work. You want more. You demand more. You've been through pandemics and wildfires, and you don't really understand what's happening with air quality, but I'm going to tell you. What I'll tell you is that the people that are dealing with the most extreme environments, so these are people that are dealing with issues oftentimes of a combination of a chronic disease, a respiratory health or heart problem. They might be managing cancer at a later stage, for example, and be immunocompromised, or be the 1 in 10 people that are dealing with asthma or allergies in the environment. So combined with having poor congestion or environmental quality outside and then prolonged indoor use is you basically have the perfect toxic soup for your lungs. And frankly, your brain, not to mention all other organs that are impacted by poor air quality. So you can wait till it's too late, or you can take the steps today. The majority of people that aren't dealing with a chronic disease issue or aren't dealing with really toxic external air pollution, well, then you're living in a pretty wonderful space, aren't you? That you get to have the privilege of not having to care every day. That doesn't mean that it doesn't matter, right? Health can't wait till later, and the environments that we spend time in, which is about 90% of your time indoors, are going to have a very significant impact on how well you breathe, on how your heart is functioning. It's going to have an impact on how well you can focus. And so ask yourself, take a minute, look around, and you may wonder that as you are spending 90,000 hours of your life working, does your work environment in this new era of work support you to live at your best, support you to flourish, and support you to have the greatest brain and lifespan that you can?
That is really interesting. And when you talk about what people are demanding in this new era of work, what is most important?
So this new era of work starts by defining what were the old eras and where did we come from. So when we start to look at this, Julia Hobsbawm has a wonderful framework and sort of starts to look at the idea that the optimism years, this was sort of post-war 40s time, that really lasted the mid-70s. These years, we had these beautiful skyscrapers. You worked for a company for life. You got a gold watch and you trusted that you could work for the company for life. This was the era of Mad Men and martini lunches. The majority of people in the workplace were men. This era ended in 1978. We're ushered in the mezzanine years. This is where we see more women in the workplace. We see the demand for work-life balance, this idea of how does a family manage two working parents. Maternity and paternity leave come into the fray as how do we balance having a family while working the hours that we have. So this closes out in around 2007 with the recession, and we see people move from workplaces to try to oftentimes losing a job, and we see the co-working era begin. So usher in WeWork. Actually, not a new concept at all. Regency had been doing it for a while, but WeWork said, leases are cheap, the terms are lower, we can bring people into these environments, set up individual offices, and offer beer on tap and free M&Ms. This was the era even where we see sort of the Googleplex, right, where foosball comes in, and we can entice people with food, which, by the way, By the way, beer in the middle of the day and M&Ms is probably not going to work every single day for you as a lifelong health solution. The idea of work-life balance is now out the window and people are burning out. And this leads to 2019 with the World Health Organization putting a price tag on burnout of over $3 billion. And we saw major media outlets promote this idea that work was killing us. By the way, that was before the pandemic. So 2020 comes in and everything stops. Things get quiet. The way that we knew is now gone. I was often asked, what's the new normal? And I reminded people, what was normal and were you ever okay with that? Why do you want a newer version of what you used to have that didn't work? And so rather, let's look at a new era of work. What do we know about this new era? We know you live longer than ever before. We know that we want to spend time with our family. We know it's really challenging to try to balance multiple parents in the workplace. Also, with women having to manage more caregiving duties, we see that across the board statistically, both for taking care of parents and for children. We see this concept of brain capital, brain health, flourishing. What do these words even mean? The idea that your brain span is not as long as your lifespan, and that we basically expose ourselves to what I'll call brain Cheetos. So we're in toxic environments, we scroll, we can't focus, we're constantly interrupted, and then we wonder, is this just me? And the answer is no. We don't think about what we put in our brain, and then our brain doesn't work for us as long as our body does. So we're redefining this era, and what's different now than ever in the past is that we have more data. It's just up to us whether or not we want to listen to how people work at their best or force them to work at their worst and be surprised when the outcomes are not what you want. So let me end on an analogy. It's one of my favorites. So a lot of companies out there invest in individual people. So this is referenced as human capital. So I like to think of it like a seed. And that seed has a lot of education, a lot of training. That seed might have a lot of internships and a lot of recommendations. But we take this seed and then we, I think the best phrase is shove it into the crack of the concrete in the sidewalk. And it doesn't get any water, it doesn't get any light, and everyone steps on it every day. And then we come back a year later and wonder why this high investment of the individual human has not flourished. So let's put it in fertile soil. Let's give it some sunshine and fresh air. Let's give it the nutrients and food. And by the way, let's give it some friends to protect it. Give it some shade. And a year later, you'll see that seed flourish. And that's what I hope in this new era of work is that we build forest in our workplaces.
I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you so much for your input today, Dr. Gray. Wonderful having you.
Thank you. Be well all.
As you've heard, the modern workplace is more than the physical space it occupies. It must be an ecosystem that welcomes us, inspires us, and empowers us, transforming the office from merely a location into a vibrant, productive environment. A good example of that is The 8 in Seattle, built, developed, and owned by Skanska USA Commercial Development. The 8 is a 25-story, 50,000 square meter commercial office tower featuring retail spaces, a public plaza, and extensive exterior decks. Every element, from the flow of the space to the choice of materials, is intentional, reflecting commitment to innovation and sustainability in the materials used. Myrrh Caplan is Senior Vice President for Sustainability with Skanska USA Building. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Myrrh, the 8 is actually fantastic. I've had the chance to get a tour inside recently. It really is quite special. For those listening, talk us through what it means in practice for the people working in a building like the 8. What's it like? What does it feel like? Take us on a tour.
I kind of liken it to my dream of having a very stylish and modern greenhouse in my backyard to set up my office. I have not done this yet, by the way, but I want to be able to work in there. I want to be able to grow beautiful plants and be able to throw down my yoga mat and, play music and maybe have friends over. And it's meant to be comfortable. And that's what it feels like. It feels like a sanctuary. And In the building itself, or around the building itself, the retail and plaza spaces are open, and you hear voices and music pouring out, right? And to me, that's kind of that happy place that draws people in. And, hopefully listeners will take a moment and go and look at the beautiful pictures, because there really are some gorgeous pictures of the floor to ceiling glazing, the glass that is 14 feet floor to ceiling heights on the office floors, and the incorporation of wood elements, and the upper floors have views out to the sound and the mountains, and it's just really gorgeous. The plaza and retail spaces are activated and have a real energy and vibe to them, which is kind of our signature thing to do on the retail level. And then the interior, lobby spaces are designed to act as a lobby, as you would expect, but also to provide places to relax and have conversations and really convene, in a little slightly calmer way than outdoors. But, once again, engaging through that use of wood and plants and the beautiful expanses of glass to let the light in.
Great. When I was at the 8, I noticed really soaring ceilings and a lot of light and actually a really nice smell. I wasn't quite sure if some certain kind of scent or air was being pumped in.
I think the only way to explain the smell in our buildings, because it's not true just for this one, it's true for all of our buildings where we've incorporated a lot of work around, indoor air quality, is that it's fresh, right? And that it's through the use of bipolar ionization, providing lots of plants that clean the air, and the use of the most sustainable materials so that there's not, off-gassing happening that's affecting the air quality.
That is really interesting. And when you talk about these technologies of air filters and the design features with the natural light and so on, can you talk us through some of those technologies and features that are really making a difference here, and perhaps how they're being scaled up?
What's made a real difference is that we strive to use automation to make the experience of the occupant or the visitor as touch-free as possible, and as well incorporating a lot of other features that minimize exposure to germs. We all went through COVID, and so that's still on everyone's mind, right? And it should be that we still need to provide highly safe and healthy spaces. And so, scaling those types of approaches up is so much easier when it's a new construction project, because, we require it to be integrated within the design, and then, of course, within the criteria of the construction phase and the operations phase. We certainly learned during COVID, and as did most owners, or almost all owners, that it is possible and necessary to scale up these things within an operating asset, but it is certainly more complicated. And so I think we get much better results now that we can, in fact, incorporate it into the design. And I would just add to my answer that intelligent and thoughtful systems and technology are important. And of course, we're incorporating that. As I said, this building, the 8 is, smart and wired score and all of those things, because it's being recognized for all of the technology and innovation we're putting into those places. But what makes all of that meaningful is, to our tenants and visitors, is the human interface, right? We look to the feedback from the people in the space to ensure the air quality, the thermal comfort, the light levels, the cleaning, and, all the other focus areas within the wellness space, and related to their comfort are being delivered in the right way. And I think that's incredibly important to continue to have those dialogues and have that feedback loop, so that we make sure that it continues to operate the best way.
You mentioned earlier about materials and that they make a big difference in what a workplace feels like. And I can really say that the feeling inside the 8 when I was there, the materials do really affect that. How do materials do that, actually affect the feeling of the space?
Material selection is we're really looking at this in a holistic way. We're looking at all of the benefits or opportunities that come along with a particular product. And beyond that, we and many of our design partners have been working on, in the industry to tackle the challenges of assessing products because that takes time, especially the ones that have multi-sustainability attributes. Full disclosure, I am the co-chair of an organization called Mindful Materials. And that's important to know because that's the organization that is the convener of what we've called the CMF or the Common Materials Framework. And I'll explain in a second how that advances everyone's goals around sustainability. But in a nutshell, the CMF is the technological database of all of those different types of transparency backup, that exist out in the world, such as health product declarations, which are HPDs, environmental product declarations, EPDs, declare or red list labels, social and other, like documentation that's out there in the ether or in someone's computer at a manufacturer location, right? So not only will the compilation of all of that into one database save us practitioners from all those hours of work and be able to give us immediate results, but it will provide owners a fast track to choosing the best materials given, their goals and focus areas. And so the reason that that's important from a sustainability standpoint is that, let's say an owner or we as an owner say we want something that is durable, we want it to be healthy, we want it to have low carbon, we want to make sure that it's coming from a responsible supplier. We can plug in what that criteria is that's important to us or our other clients and be able to immediately see a better, more robust list of options for that material type. And so this is coming soon, actually very soon, because we already have technology partners that are about to release some beta. And so I only see that growing in that, we're going to have greater ability to choose well.
Fantastic. One of the intentional choices in making a healthy environment is also security. And I've heard you talk about this meaning more than just physical safety. Can you talk us through your thinking?
You can walk by a building and feel unsafe. It may be that they have not done appropriate lighting all around the building. In general, you're just not feeling like the landscaping really, is done in a way where you can see beyond it to see if there's anything happening behind it, right? So, when you're looking at creating exterior spaces, we're thinking about, let's make sure there's no blind corners, there's no dark spots. We're providing more brightness, occupancy sensors, and laying out the spaces in a way that allows for greater visibility of what's happening up ahead or behind. It's also for our internal folks, our occupants and visitors, that, we're providing education and knowledge to, we're sharing about the resilience of the building to everyone so that they understand the benefits of that building and how it's protecting them. And frankly, that can be very mentally taxing if you feel uncomfortable that the building you're in is going to survive something like a major natural disaster or, extreme weather conditions, or even just loss of power from the grid. It can be something as simple as making sure the community kitchen area has a refrigerator that's connected to the generator so that, let's say, if they need to store some medicine or some pumped milk or something like that, we've provided that protection. Moreover, like I said, we physically put it into our structures as well. So, it can lean towards something more like triple pane glazing or glass, or, even something more hardy like ballistic glass if needed, given a particular environment around the building.
Myrrh, thank you so much for your insights today and for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Emily.
In this episode, we heard Dr. Whitney Austin Gray, Senior Vice President at the International Well Building Institute, talk about the new era of work, a concept that reflects a significant shift in how we understand and approach the workplace. This new era of work is driven by several converging factors. It's not just about where we work, but how our work environment helps us to perform and be at our best. And Myrrh Caplan, Senior Vice President for Sustainability with Skanska USA Building, talked about The 8, the fantastic new Skanska office building in Seattle that is setting a new standard for what a workplace can be. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss the next one. And as always, you can reach out to us via Skanska's LinkedIn account or by emailing to podcast@skanska.com. I'm Emily Mandel, and this is Shaping Sustainable Places.